She was the wife of an emperor, a mother, a noblewoman, a woman born into one of Rome's most powerful families. But behind the marble pillars, behind the golden veils and public ceremonies, they whispered another name: the nymph of the palace, the empress of lust, the woman who could not be satisfied. She walked with grace to Rome's most sacred halls, eyes lowered, draped in silk, her voice soft. But when the sun fell, the stories began. They said she slipped out of the palace under a hood, that she disguised herself and sold her body in the city's filthiest brothels, that she lay with soldiers, gladiators, slaves, not for power, but for pleasure, that she didn't just indulge, she competed.
How many men could she outlast in one night? Poets whispered, senators laughed, Rome listened. Her name was Valeria Messalina, wife to Emperor Claudius, mother of Britannicus, one of the most powerful women in Roman history. And yet, there are no monuments in her honor, no glowing eulogies, no temples bearing her name, because Messalina wasn't remembered for peace, or diplomacy, or duty. She was remembered for lust, for betrayal, for a public disgrace so immense it ended in blood. They said she died half naked in a garden, clutching a dagger she was too afraid to use, and executed by a soldier too disgusted to speak. But here's the truth. We don't know what's real. We only know what was written. And those words, the ones that survived, came from men. Men who feared powerful women. Men who crafted legends with knives and ink. Men who built Rome's image by burning hers. So ask yourself, was Messalina truly a monster of decadence? Or was she something even more dangerous? A woman who refused to be controlled. Because in ancient Rome, a powerful woman wasn't just suspicious, she was unforgivable. The rumors began. It started with a whisper. A servant, a guard, a senator's jealous wife, someone, no one knows who, began to talk about what Messalina did when the sun went down, where she went, who she saw, and how she behaved when no one was watching. And from that whisper came one of the most infamous reputations in Roman history, a reputation so vile, so excessive, so unbelievable, it still shocks the world 2,000 years later. The brothel story. One of the most repeated and most grotesque stories about Messalina came from the poet Juvenal. He claimed that Messalina didn't just sneak out at night. She disguised herself, took on a false name, and worked as a prostitute in one of Rome's filthiest brothels, all night long. Juvenal writes, "She took her station naked, with gilded nipples, her name scrawled above the door like any other common girl." He claimed she serviced dozens of Mennonite, sometimes over 100, and only left when she was the last woman standing. She held a dagger, but she couldn't do it. She couldn't end it herself. And so the soldier did it for her. The empress of lust, dead in the dirt. The historians wrote her ending as a morality tale. She was too wild. She brought it on herself. She died the way she lived, disgracefully. But what if the truth was simpler? What if she was just a woman who dared to hold power in a world that demanded her silence? Rome's obsession with sexual control. To understand why Messalina's story became so twisted, you have to understand something deeper, something darker. Rome wasn't just an empire of laws. It was an empire of control. And at the center of that control was the female body. Ideal Roman woman. In Roman culture, the perfect woman was silent, modest, obedient, and, most of all, sexually invisible. She belonged to her father, then to her husband. Her purpose was to bear sons, run the household, and never cause scandal. Even powerful women, empresses, were expected to play this role. If they didn't, the empire turned on them hard. Sexual shame as a weapon. Rome didn't just punish rebellious women, it shamed them. And the most powerful tool it used was sex. If a woman was too outspoken, too ambitious, too clever, the fastest way to destroy her was to brand her as a whore, a nymphomaniac, or a threat to public morality. It didn't matter if it was true. In fact, it was better if it wasn't, because a lie spreads faster than any truth. The fear of a powerful woman. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Messalina may have been guilty of ambition, but that was enough. Because to Rome, a woman with influence was already crossing a line. She didn't need to sleep with 100 men, or compete with prostitutes, or wear disguises in brothels. She just needed to threaten the order, to remind men that power didn't belong to them alone. And that was unforgivable. Empress to cautionary tale. Messalina's legacy wasn't carved in marble. It was passed down as a warning to future women in power, to wives of emperors, to daughters of Rome. Speak too loud, and they'll call you vulgar. Show ambition, and they'll call you corrupt. Step too far, and they'll write you into filth, even after your debt. That was the real punishment. Not the dagger, but the story. The story that came after. Messalina was more than the rumors, but Rome never let her be anything else. Because it's easier to condemn a woman for sex than admit she had power.
The death of Messalina. By the time Emperor Claudius returned to Rome, the palace was already in chaos. His wife, the mother of his child, the woman he had trusted, had married another man, publicly, legally while he was still alive. Messalina didn't deny it. She didn't run. She didn't hide behind advisors. Some say she thought Claudius would forgive her, that he always had, that he always would. But this time, he didn't. Broken heart, the betrayal that couldn't be undone. Her husband, Gaius Silius, was seized. He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He was dragged into the Forum, Rome's center of public life, and executed immediately. No trial, no mercy. his blood spilled where merchants sold grain. A message, one that needed no explanation. Messalina fled to the gardens of Lucullus, a private retreat once owned by Rome's greatest generals. There, she waited.
Not like an empress, not like a traitor, but like a woman who finally realized she had no way out. The dagger she couldn't use. She was offered a blade, not by a friend, not by a servant, by the men sent to kill her. It was custom in Rome to allow nobles to die by their own hand, to keep some shred of dignity. She took the dagger, she raised it, and froze. Some say she couldn't bear the pain. Some say her hands shook too violently. Some say she tried, but the will to live outweighed the shame. Whatever the reason, she didn't do it.
Or her strategy, or her ability to move through one of the most cutthroat courts in human history. She was remembered for sex, because that's the story they wanted to tell. That's how Rome punished women who held power, not by recording their victories, but by corrupting their legacies, turning real people into monsters. They called Messalina Rome's most perverted empress. But what if that wasn't true? What if it was never about her behavior? What if it was about control, about making an example, a warning, a cautionary tale sown with scandal, so no other woman would dare reach for what she once held? Because in ancient Rome, there was one sin worse than lust, worse than betrayal, worse than treason. It was a woman who refused to be silent. So next time you walk past the ruins of a Roman forum, or marvel at the cold beauty of a marble empress, ask yourself, what was her real story? And who made sure we'd never hear it? Messalina is gone, but the legend they built in her name still echoes, not in stone, but in